Hello there, friends, and welcome to More Movies Podcast, number 58.
He's out of bank at 58th and Madison.
Hello there, and welcome to the podcast where we like to talk about all things movies, cinema, film-related films we've been watching, films that we watched years ago we like to discuss, films that are going to come out soon, all that kind of stuff. My name's Greg Fisher. I'm sat here next to my main man, David Roberts. How are you doing, Dave?
I am fabulous, sir. We are now in the springtime. It is a wonderful time of year. The weather is out and wonderful. And we're ready for a summer of blockbusters, are we not?
It's pissing down here, mate. But I'm all for it. I'm sure the sun will be back really soon. Yeah, summer of blockbusters ahead. Lots of films to be talking about over the next couple of months. But this week, we've both decided we're going to be talking about some classics. Yes, that's right. It's the great Indiana Jones collection. So, Indiana Jones. You know, one thing I found, my friend, there's not many people out there that voice any dislike or dissent towards the Indiana Jones films. Of course, some of them more than others, but on the whole, you know, like you get people that are like, I'm not a fan of Star Wars.
No, yeah.
Well, there's not that many that don't like Indiana Jones of that set. You know, it tends to be universally popular. Maybe I'm wrong. Do you hate Indiana Jones? If so, write in and let us know, and we'll rip it up and put it in the fire. But yeah, you know, a lot of people like these movies. They're very popular. We, of course, have got a 5th installment due out in end of June. It is now sort of, we're the 7th of May today. 7th of May 2023. So a little bit of time yet. So we're in the build up to it. So we thought, didn't we? We'd talk about the 4 that have preceded it. Maybe even mention the long-running Young Indiana Jones series that was
indeed
that was going in the 90s.
It is a crazy thing how you say universally popular they are. And I know a few people who haven't seen it, which is bizarre.
Kill them!
Let me kill them now.
I know, but yeah, they are films that I think there's something about them that's so universally accessible,
yeah,
and simple, and because of the kind of light-hearted nature of them, and the themes that we can all kind of understand very easily and simply. But yeah, they just seem to work. They're kind of the perfect Easter Sunday, Christmas afternoon, that type of thing where those kind of films that you can put on, everyone can watch, and they're going to be tremendous fun, aren't they? So yeah, they're very special films, I think, in that way.
Yeah, well, certainly the original 3. So before we go getting too far ahead of ourselves, let's start at the beginning with Raiders of the Lost Ark. So Raiders of the Lost Ark, 1981, starring Harrison Ford, Karen Allen, and a host of other people that are now, you know, part of our film lexicon. Steven Spielberg, of course, directing it. I believe the idea came about from George Lucas because they were both on holiday together, having done Star Wars and Close Encounters and all that stuff. And they went on holiday together, and Spielberg said something like, I've always wanted to do a Bond film. And George Lucas was like, well, I've got that beat. I got this idea. Indiana Smith. He's this archaeologist, blah, blah, blah. And Spielberg said, change the name to Jones and we got a deal. And the rest
Smith and Jones.
History. Smith and Jones, exactly. Jones is a better Welsh name, see? Indiana Jones is a Welshman. He's a good old Welshman. That's the thing that he doesn't get credit for, being Welsh.
Now, that would be a great remake, wouldn't it? The Welsh Indiana
Or
Jones.
just go to a prequel real, like, far back, where his ancestor, before they went over there, you know, was a Welshman.
From the valleys.
He's from the valleys, and he found the tomb of King Arthur, which is up here in the Camlo Hills, as everybody knows.
Yeah, it's exactly right. Lucas actually wrote the Indiana Smith before he made Star Wars. He'd had it a long time before that, but he ended up obviously doing Star Wars first, but it was always sitting there kind of waiting for its moment, I guess.
Yeah.
And much like, you know, in Star Wars was his attempt to recreate and was very heavily influenced by Buck Rogers and all those sci-fi serials of the 30s and the 40s. This was the same thing. It was influenced by those adventure serials of the 30s and
Zorro
40s
and stuff like that.
Exactly. And comic books of the same time, like Doc Savage and stuff, very influenced by
Doc Savage, that is so
Doc
cool.
Savage.
That is so cool that you brought that in. Good old Doc Savage. Now that's the going back to the days underneath your covers when you're 8 years old with a torch reading a comics annual, action annual with Doc Savage stripping it.
Yes.
Doesn't get any better than that.
It doesn't. And it's nice. It's one of the things that it works really nicely that they were so influenced by these things from their childhood.
Yeah.
And they got the opportunity to kind of put them on such a bigger stage.
And going back to what we said about being universal, I think that's why, I mean, they definitely appeal to boys, fans of comics. They are boys' movies. I hate to say that in a way, but the cool thing is, though, I mean, in a lot of ways, like in this first film, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Karen Allen plays Marion Ravenwood, and she's kind of tough in it. She can drink them under the table. She can throw a punch. You know, she's not completely helpless. There's a bit more Princess Leia going in there. So even though they're kind of boys' movies in that way, the women are represented. They're kicking some ass. They're badass too. Certainly in this film, I thought she was great in it. It's one of the most favourite things about it for me. Karen Allen's character, that whole setup at the start where they're doing the drinks contest and they're having the shots, and that hilarious shot of that guy where he's just like, he slowly keels over. That's Spielberg at his best. Love her in it. But yeah, influenced by the serials, also influenced by other films. If you look at like pictures of like Gary Cooper and stuff over the days, the fedoras there and the bandolier and everything, it's very much that look was already established, wasn't it?
Yeah, going back to the kind of late 40s and the 50s, there was lots of films that, of course, they were influenced by those serials and comics as well. And films with like Gary Cooper. There's a great film, Secret of the Incas, which is very much basically Indiana Jones as a film, which as we've
Charlton Heston, look at him
Charlton Heston.
That hat's got quite a wide brim, hasn't it?
It's very wide brim.
We've seen this scarf. That's kind of
special, isn't it?
It's very special.
But we've seen this with Star Wars, how so many films from that period influenced Star Wars, and loads of references and shot for shot stuff where you go, oh, that's that. And Indiana Jones is exactly the same. Less talked about, I guess, because Star Wars is so widely covered in those kind of things. But Indy was the same for
Indy's more grounded. It happens in our world. It's historical piece. It's based in the past. So there's lots for us all to grab onto there. Like in this film, you got the Nazis are the bad guys because it's like 1936, I think it's, or somewhere there. But it's based towards just before the start of World War II. The Nazis are looking for this ancient artifact, the Ark of the Covenant, some ancient Hebrew sort of like, I don't know, it's like a little tomb, isn't it? Like a little coffin. It's full of full of ghosts. No, it's full of sand. But the Nazis are looking for it because Hitler apparently had this interest in the occult. So they've played down that strain. Whether he did or not, fuck knows. But they certainly sell it in this.
It's always been one of them fascinating story beats, isn't it? Hitler obsessed with the occult. It always works. Yeah. In terms of the Nazis love all this strange old stuff. It just a great story beat to always hit. Yeah.
Well, for me, it's the Nazis are the bad guys. That's the best bad guys to have. I want to see loads of them get burned up, killed, shot in the worst way, run over by tanks. And if you really hate Nazis like I do, these are the perfect films to watch. And that kind of, he developed that with the character as well. It's obviously Spielberg doing it. He hates Nazis too. And for good reason, and he made Indiana Jones the type of person. He even says,
Nazis. I hate these guys.
You want to see some Nazi killing? This is the one. You've also got Ronald Lacey playing Tote, the Gestapo guy, the SS guy.
Oh, yeah.
And he's like this consummate British actor. Really, really cool. He's played loads of parts. Very good at playing a villain. He was in Porridge, you know what I mean? Stuff like that. He was a character in Porridge. But, his career's almost over, and I think he's stopped trying to get roles a lot, and he's gone into teaching film or acting, and stuff like that. He's kind of retired, semi-retired, and he gets cast in this, and that's, it's the role of a lifetime, isn't it?
It is,
and he is the personification. when I was a kid and I watched this, and this guy, he was terrifying. He was despicable. He was Weasley. He looked like he couldn't fight himself. He always made other people do it. You know, he looked like you could, you know, you had health issues and everything. And he's always coughing in his hand. He's really horrible. But that's like the perfect sort of caricature of these evil, like German Nazis. And he just plays it so well.
Yeah, he plays it to a T, and it's kind of they're the kind of actors you need to pull in for roles like this, aren't they? You know, the classic British actors and stuff. They always hit the nail on the head. And I mean, I remember as a kid watching the wonderful stop motion melting. That frightened me as a kid. I was like,
well, even before that,
strong.
When he's going into the first catacomb, you know, where the very first set piece with the golden idol, there's some skeletons and dead bodies in there, aren't there? That are really gruesome. So, I mean, the first time I ever watched it, it was probably when they put it on telly. So we're talking like mid 80s, probably around 1984, something like that. And I'd be about 6 then, something like that. And the trailer for it coming on ITV or something enough. You know, my dad's going, oh, look at this, have a look at this. I'm just like, oh my God. It's like my whole world changed. So Star Wars before that and Superman probably made the biggest impressions on me before that as a kid. I'd seen this and it was just love at first sight. I just thought, I was all about that. You know, after seeing it, you got some hat that's somehow like a cowboy hat or something that roughly resembled the Indiana Jones hat, got a bit of old rope or old twine, and that was, you know, got a stick for that. Oh, it was, you just want to be Indiana Jones after that. Got one of your mum's old handbags because he always had that. He always had that handbag, didn't he, that he put his stuff in.
Oh, lipstick.
But it was just the ultimate thing as a kid. It was just like, oh my God.
It is the ultimate thing.
Hero.
Yeah. Ultimate hero. Well, I always think like, what an opening this film has, not only obviously the fantastic set piece that everyone knows now.
It's iconic, isn't it?
Getting the idol, the ball rolling, it's been satirised so much. But even just before that, the very opening part is going through the woods with his the guys who were leading him.
The woods, the deep jungle.
Deep jungle. Leading him to this, this cave. It's an amazing opening sequence for the character because you don't see Indy's face for the first couple of minutes. As we see the credits and he's going through, but the camera keeps really close and starts focusing on the different areas of Indy. There's his whip, there's his hat, and all these almost in silhouette. And it's these shots that are telling you everything about the character really quickly without saying it until we get the big reveal, and then obviously the guy tries to do him in and he gets him, and it's like what a nice, brilliant opening to introduce a character.
Yeah.
And then we get a great set piece where it shows you what he can do.
So there he is. The first thing we see about him, he's like cool as fuck. Is like the guy's sneaking up behind him with a piece and he whips it out of his hand and then just lets the guy run off like, you know, it's like, this guy's badass. But when we start to get into it as well, the humour starts to come out. You know, the spiders whipping him off his back like he's not bothered about spiders at all. And that is a setup for later on he's going to be terrified of snakes.
Yeah. Because
you think he's not scared of anything. He's just knocking tarantula spiders. Alfred Molina's there going, oh, he's confident, you know? And that's how we'd all be, isn't it? That's how we'd be like, oh my God, spider crawling on your face, across your face is just terrifying. But Indy just knocks him off. Yeah, come on, let's go. There's this humour with the character. So they're establishing that, which is a really powerful part of it. And I think Harrison Ford was very good at playing up to that as well. That he's like, he can be this like ultimate iconic style hero, but he's also fallible. You know, like when he jumps across the bottomless pit in that place and he goes to slip, and he thinks he's got it, and he grabs a vine, and the vine goes, and there's look on his face as if he goes, ooh. You know, he's suddenly, one minute he's smiling like I made it, and then he's like, ooh. And I thought it really grounded the character and made him feel quite real, like human.
Absolutely, and I think that's a lot to do with Harrison himself. Obviously, amazing actor. We love him to pieces. He does so many great things over the years, and kind of knows how to choose a role. But I think we've said before how like protective of the role he seemed
Yeah.
because of how much he's invested himself into this character, which is probably his favorite role he's ever done in terms of
definitely.
He protects it, and
he hates Han Solo.
Yeah.
Well, whatever reason, he just hates Han Solo, but he loves Indiana Jones.
Yeah,
fair enough.
And he does such an amazing control of that character, of what he is, what he means. He gets it, you know.
Yeah,
and
I'd say definitely he's got a lot to do with that, but also probably Spielberg, because Spielberg was always great at humanizing the extraordinary. That's the great appeal of his early films. When you got E.T. and Close Encounters, they were real people. These extraordinary things were happening to. So he is very good at that, and Harrison Ford just played it so well. But this is the thing, the guy's he's a multi-dimensional character. He's a tough guy, like almost generic, iconic James Bond style tough guy, like nothing can get past him. He's also fallible, and he makes these mistakes we can relate to, you know, and they're funny. Like when he's running to that plane, just start the plane, Jock, start the plane. He's like panicking, and it's like builds that suspense. But he's also a college professor, so he's also absolutely, you know, switched on, clever mother figure as well. And that's where we kind of go to after that first set piece, and he gets away. He loses the icon to Belloc, played by, again, another great British actor, Paul Freeman. Brilliant. Playing Beloche. But he gets away with his life. And there's a snake in the plane. Oh my God, I hate snakes, Jock. I hate them. And it's like, you know, not terrified by spiders, but terrified of snakes. And that in itself is going to set it up for later on. A couple of movies down the line, and they explain why. It's brilliant, but we'll get to that. You know, we've got that amazing bit at the start in the jungle and the idol. Then we have a little bit of you know, exposition with the Ark and this is the mission. But then we're straight back into another thrilling set piece with the fight in the bar in the Himalayas. It just doesn't stop this film. It just gives you one after the other. It
is like set piece after set piece, but enough time in between them to tell the story and bring something more to it, to then just into the next thing. The pacing is brilliant.
Yeah.
You're never sitting bored during the film, that's for sure.
Shot as well, really nicely shot. I think it was Douglas Slocum, one of the great old British cinematographers. You know, the kind of guy that I think Spielberg said about he could just look at the sun and know what T-stop for it to be at and what lens to use and everything. He was just an old master. And I think that choice to use a great cinematographer like that and give it a very classic look where everything is lit perfectly and everything looks so dramatic. The use of shadows, the lighting in it's perfect, the costumes, and of course the John Williams score. These all help to elevate it from just a dumb action movie, like a lot of the ones that kind of came out afterwards, influenced by it. This was the big difference between this and then. There was the level of you know, professionalism that went into it.
Absolutely, and I think with the look, they obviously took, say, a classical approach and very much influenced by the kind of classical Hollywood of the 50s and stuff, and went, we're going to make this look real and perfection, you know.
Perfection is the word,
and the like when they're in the desert and the golden landscapes and stuff, and
some of the shots, people say the best shots in cinema. That shot where they're digging the Well of Souls, and the sun's going down, and the silhouette of them all digging.
It's amazing.
He's there with the hat on, and that's Douglas Slocum. That's like brilliant cinematography. The sound design as well. Every time a gun gets fired, it's you know, there's this incredible. The punches sound like larger than life. Is always this huge bang bang. You know, everything about it is bombastic. The score's bombastic. The sets, the set pieces, the stunt work is incredible. Some of the best stuntmen in the world. That's where it's like James Bond in that, you know, everything is of such a high quality. The locations, everything we've just mentioned is of such a high standard, and the perfect casting that it's hard to go wrong with Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah. It definitely fits into that narrative of Spielberg wanting to make like a Bond film, because it's you know, great stunt work in these exotic locations with great sets and everything, as you say, is so.
Well, that's it. You
large.
started in the jungle, then you're back over to America for the college, typical sort of 1930s college. Then you've got the Himalayas, where he goes to find her. Then they've got that great thing with the plane going on the map.
Yes.
That's probably taken from earlier stuff that he's sort of redone and brought to, because that's iconic and synonymous with the films. I think that sort of red line going across the map. It's like, it's not an Indiana Jones film without that.
No, and how many people have used that since? It's such a great idea.
And it's a homage to Indiana Jones then. But then they go to Egypt and you've got all that great stuff happening there. And you've got the fight with Pat Roach as well near that Nazi plane.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
That's just... And before all that, you've got running through the markets of Cairo and stuff with the famous sword swiveling scene where they were all the crew was ill with food poisoning and no one was really up for filming. And Harrison Ford thought of I'll shoot him instead and save us all a bloody ball ache, which is just genius. And again, for me, that always tied into Han Solo, shooting Greedo under the table.
Yeah, exactly.
That shady sort of, I'll just shoot you. It's so American, isn't it? It's like, I'll just kill you with a gun.
But says so much about the character, doesn't it?
It's so cool. It's such a cool moment. The guy's there. He's huge. He's like 6'4". He's got a massive scimitar sword or something. He's swinging it about like it's a, baton, and he's going to take your head off with it. Just kills him with a 38. It's like, everybody laughed at that. It was iconic, I think, as iconic cinema moment. But
it's so, that when we talk about it being grounded in reality, it's so logical as well in terms of course he's going to have a gun, so why not just
why not just shoot him?
Yeah, you kind of get, of course, that's what you do in that situation. So it's perfect in that way, and
because you got the chase through the streets. Then she's in the basket. Which basket is it? And he thinks she's ended up on this truck that blows up, and it's a real sort of whoa moment. Marion's dead. He goes to get drunk, then he with the monkey and. You're so invested in it by then. It's like, this, even though it's just fantasy, it's, silly stuff, really. Spielberg does such a good job of, you get this rich character development that you're just so into it by then.
Yeah, absolutely. It's manages to capture the imaginations as you're watching it. It's
and to finish up the story, we get to the point where there's the big showdown. They've been on the ship, and there's the Nazi sub in there as well. You get the U-boat in there, and then they take it to that place, and they're going to do the ceremony, and that's the whole, industrial light and magic bit, really, isn't it? With all the ghosts coming out of it. Don't look, Marion, don't look. And then, like you said earlier, the face melting. That was terrifying, but it's good that they didn't hold back on all that stuff. And
it is.
Here's a little one for you as well. Back in the day, that used to be a 15. And nowadays, it's been reclassified, I think, as it doesn't say on there, but it's a PG now.
Well,
that's another thing they did as well. Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. No. It's just Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Well, that was the same with Star Wars, wasn't it? It was Star Wars, and then it became Episode 4, New Hope afterwards. But the same with that, they go back and retcon it. But there's more explanation on the rating for the next with the next film. But yeah, I mean, it is the stunning ending that they don't hold back on, and the effects for the time, and they still hold up today. Of all
they still
puppetry and the mountain, it's amazing. It's the stuff that always works, doesn't it? The great puppets and stuff they created, and stop motion animation and stuff like that.
Practical effects. But it's a good mix, isn't it? Because you've got all those ghosts swirling around and stuff, and that almost terrified me more. The thought of these like ghosts swirling about and stuff. It's exactly what you kind of picture, and then they turn nasty, don't they? And they get nasty faces. And the same sort of technology they use just a year or two later with Ghostbusters. It was the same crew, ILM crew, doing these amazing special effects. So a great mix of practical and I suppose digital special effects, as they were starting to become then, or what do they call them? Special effects. They used to call them in the 80s. Special effects.
Oh, this film is kind of the, we'd had Star Wars and Jaws before this, but this is the kind of the launch of the 80s blockbusters decade, which really became the decade of blockbusters.
Yeah.
And ILM was completely tied into that. They did all the films, didn't they? They were involved in everything because they were the guys.
Oh, yeah, and they will have just grown and got bigger and bigger and taught loads of people how to do it who are still working today. But fantastic film. One of my all-time greatest films of all time.
Absolutely.
If that's a thing. The all-time greatest films of all time. But yeah, I used to say, didn't I, when we were in uni making our student films, unless we can make a film as good as Raiders of the Lost Ark, we just think we ain't got a film. It's a good sort of level to sort of,
it is.
For all of these reasons, because it's difficult to make a film that good that ticks so many boxes. And it's kind of accessible to a lot of people. It's very open. So, yeah, Raiders, what a film. So that brings us on to the next installment, which is Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. This was a couple of years later, 1984. Harrison Ford, of course, returned into the role, capitalizing on the success they'd had with Raiders of the Lost Ark because it made a lot of money at the box office, a lot of money. So, of course, they're going to do more of them. So this one takes the action over to India. Eventually, we start in Hong Kong or somewhere like that. Lao She, great opening.
Really great opening.
But most of it takes the action over to India, and it kind of stays there, doesn't it? We don't go to as many places in this one. Overall, this one is probably, of the original three, it's the one that's not liked as much. Those that love it, they really love it, of course. We're probably in that category. I love it. But I've found, talking to people over the years, Temple of Doom is the one it's not everybody's favourite. Partly because the next installment is again so strong. We'll go into that when we talk about it. But you got Spielberg returning as director, John Williams back doing the score, George Lucas is involved, executive producer, and writing the story and whatnot. I think, check me if I'm wrong, but this takes place a couple of years before Raiders of the Lost Ark in 1935. So Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom is actually a prequel.
It is a prequel. Yeah, it's definitely a prequel. They one of the big reasons is they wanted to not do Nazis again, which is probably a bad decision.
Yeah, because they came back and they did Nazis again.
Exactly. So that was one of the reasons, and they wanted to explore the past a bit. So yeah, they went with a prequel. There was a lot of initial criticism of the film when it first came out, saying it didn't meet up, and there's criticism about what the kind of themes of the film as well. It's the appreciation has grown over the years, but it still is certainly one of the kind of the weakest of the bunch. But that's not to say it's a bad film at all.
To be honest, it's the one I probably watched the most as a kid, because by the time that came on TV, I would have recorded it, videotaped it off telly. And I probably watched that the most for some reason. Maybe didn't have Raiders for some reason on tape for a while. Got it later on. And ended up watching the Temple of Doom more. To go to from the start, that whole bit at Lao She at the start, Lao She's nightclub, is brilliant. You got the opening with a musical number, Kate Capshaw singing in Chinese, one of the Chinese languages, singing Anything Goes. And it's really well worked out, almost Busby Berkeley style number with all the dancers and everything and the cinematography to go with it. Kind of a strange opening. As a kid, I used to think, what's this? Bloody singing and dancing. But you obviously learn to love it.
It's very 50s Hollywood, isn't it? Kind of.
And she was great as that. I thought, just a lot of people criticize her for the film because her character is quite annoying. But I seen just the other day somebody posted something saying, she's supposed to be annoying, so she actually did it well, and that's so true. But she's very, very good at that singing and dancing number, and selling herself as the kind of shallow it girl that's almost a gangster's mole. She's Lao She's mole, isn't she? And she gets caught up with Indy. But again, great tension. Within 5 minutes, he's been poisoned. The Poison you just drank, Dr. Jones.
What's this for?
Great bad guys.
Yeah.
The way that they get those guys laugh, and Spielberg does this a lot, I've found as well. He was really good at reminding us that these evil characters, these sort of pantomime bad guys, have got a great laugh, and they laugh at the most sick stuff.
The poison you just drank, Dr. Jones.
Yeah.
And it's funny, but it's like they're actually laughing because they've just poisoned you. How sick is that? They're laughing about it. These guys are serious, like.
It gives the villains, and Spielberg is great at this, is giving the villains motifs and calls that make you go, okay, that's the bad guy. You get it. Really simple things.
Makes you hate them all the more.
Yeah, it turns them into characters that you want to hate.
So when he gets the kebab skew and he throws it into the guy's chest, you're just like, yeah, get some of that. Laugh at that. But great set piece there. Lots of action. I think one guy gets a cymbal in the face. He takes a cymbal off a drum kit and throws it like a frisbee, and it hits him right in the face. The action in these films is always top notch in it. He obviously chops the gong down. He's running behind the gong, and it's getting Tommy gun. Bah, 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 bah. That's just like super cool stuff. And then they manage to escape just about in the nick of time. Gets the antidote, and then we meet Shorty. His getaway driver is Shorty. He's got boxes strapped to his trainers or his sneakers, so he can drive the car. Ke Huy Quan in the role of a lifetime. I know he's just won an Oscar for everything, everywhere, all at once, but he's always going to be Shorty to me.
What an amazing experience for him, and he really grasps the opportunity and enjoys it, doesn't he? And he's so much fun in this film. And really gives it everything. And
as a child actor, he had bags of charisma, loads of character. I think actually, I remember watching one of these making of documentaries, and Spielberg was saying that his younger brother, was actually being trying out for the casting for the role, and Ke Huy Quan was with him, and he was so funny telling his brother, "Don't do this, do that instead," and correcting him like a big brother would. That he's so good at that, they just sort of turned their focus to him. They said, "Actually, we're gonna have you."
Yeah, and what a great choice.
He was, though. He's brilliant. All that stuff when they're playing cards. You cheat, Dr. Jones. It's great stuff. I've seen some cynical people saying they thought he was annoying as well, and this is another reason people don't like it as much, because Kate Capshaw and Shorty are annoying, but they're great in it. I think there's stronger elements of a film, and it's more the writing is a little bit weaker with this one, because after they leave Hong Kong on the plane, he shuts the door and you see it's Lao She's plane. You think, oh, damn. He's in trouble here. And the pilots jump out and leave him. So actually where they end up in India is by chance. So this is not like the first film where he's actually been assigned the mission by spooks in the government or anything. This is like he just happened to land here. They jump out of the plane on that inflatable raft and end up sliding down the mountain into the river. And they literally come straight to the feet of this holy man who's from the village. And he's like, "You have been sent to us from God." So there's that whole element of, mysticism going on there. And then we get to the village. They're all poor. And there's no children. The children have been taken away. And we later find out the children have been forced into slavery down this mine. So, and that's why they've got Shorty in there as well. Because, again, it's that whole thing with these movies are for kids. Not for you, 36 years old, sitting there complaining it's not as good as the first one.
For 12-year-olds.
Yeah, it is. It's for little boys, really.
But... yeah, this is the point in the film. So I think you have the great opening, and we get to this point, and then now we are Mystic Man. We're in India. We're in this strange area. And I think this is where the film turns, and this is probably where it gets the most criticism, and people probably don't gel with it as much because it is very different. I think at this point, and this is where we get into the darker elements, as you say. Child slavery is a key theme. Black magic. Human sacrifice and stuff.
Yeah,
and I think these are the elements because this film's much darker than the other films.
Yeah,
And
and Spielberg
these
wanted
reasons.
it to be.
Yeah,
He actually he says, I think, on one of them that he wanted it to be a lot darker, but years later he kind of regretted that decision. But to be honest, I it stands for me.
It works because like Empire is the darker middle film. I think that works in trilogies where the middle film gets a bit deeper and darker.
Yeah.
It's slightly weird here because it's a prequel, but I think it works thematically. But these very reasons are why some of the criticisms that it received at the time. And actually, we were talking about ratings earlier. This film is exactly why PG-13 was created in the United States. It's different across here. We had 12A much later with Spider-Man in 2002. Yeah. But PG-13 was created in America just a couple of months after this film because of this film and Gremlins as well, which is obviously very violent in places with microwaving gremlins and stuff. And it was Spielberg as one of the ones who petitioned the MPAA to create a 12A certificate between PG and 15. Obviously knowing, it's a bit more violent, but it's still kid-friendly. So it's an interesting kind of watershed moment with this film as well in terms of, okay, it's still got those darker elements. It's for older children.
Yeah. It's quite a scary character, that guy as well, the high priest guy, who's ripping people's hearts out of their chests and stuff before he puts them in a volcano in a cage. I think that's great, though.
It is.
But again, like Raiders Lost Ark, I will have seen this when it came to TV.
Yeah.
I was far too young to see that in the cinema. But I loved it. I thought it was great. I mean, it's got its problems. And I find the problems with it, though, are just not quite as good a writing, not quite as good a effects. They're kind of production problems for me that I thought were not quite up to the standard, but it didn't stop me enjoying it because they are based on these old serials, as we mentioned earlier, and some of them would be better than others. Some of them would be a little bit cheaper. They'd recycle shots and stuff like this. And
absolutely. I mean, to me, it's like it's just the weakest of the three. That's all it is to me. It's like it's still enjoyable.
I always wonder what happened to Shorty afterwards, and I was hoping they were going to bring him into this new film that's coming soon, but it doesn't look like he is in it, unfortunately. But
he moved to America.
I know that whole thing he was going to say, Indy's going to take me to America. He says that in it somewhere, but
he went to America and became Data, didn't he?
There's a few callbacks where those two guys with the swords jump out on him and do their, and he goes for his gun and it's not there.
Not there.
So he has to fight them. And that's kind of cool. That's like them saying, let's do a callback to that, but this time he has to actually do what we were going to do, which was sword fight versus the whip, I think was the idea behind that fight. So we get to see it. That brilliant ending on the bridge, I think that's a brilliant ending. And the whole thing, he talks to Shorty in Mandarin or whatever it is, and he says, "Hold on, lady, we're going for a ride." and that actual practical effects of all those dummies falling off. I seen one thing that said that the dummies were actually animatronic mannequins, so they actually had some movement in them when they fell that made them look more real. So
pretty cool,
that is pretty cool. Fell to a sort of dicey death with the crocodiles. But I love it. I mean, the mine train. How can we not mention the mine train chase as well? Of course. That's a great set piece.
And the thing is with these things, like the mine scene chase and some of the other set pieces we've talked about, it's how many of these have been redone now across cinema, and games and TV. Like they're so memorable and well done that it's like, oh, we're gonna nick that one from Indy.
Well, even at the time, you had films like King Solomon's Mines, the Alan Quatermain thing. Sharon Stone in that, I think, and that was directly influenced by Indiana Jones. The only reason that film got greenlit was because of the success of Indiana Jones. So even back in the day, it was influencing everything that was around it. Like, you had loads of space movies after Star Wars. It was the same with this. You had, like I say, Romance in the Stone was another one with Michael Douglas's. Similar, similar enough that it was like guy with a fedora in the jungle with with his girlfriend trying to find some sort of rare artifact. And it's all Indiana Jones influenced. So, that was it though. 1984, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Still did quite well at the box office because people wanted to see it. As you say, people weren't quite as crazy about it as they were the first one. Whatever. We still love it. But it was a good 5 years later, 1989, before we get on to Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Oh, yeah.
Now, this is the first Indiana Jones film I actually watched in the cinema. We were on holiday at the time, and we were in North Wales on holiday, and it was a rainy day, and we'd gone out somewhere to do something for the day, but the rain was so bad, my parents decided, the cinema's showing stuff in the daytime, let's go to the local cinema. What was on? Indiana Jones. And yes, we'll watch that. And I was like, yes.
X marks the spot.
Oh, and Dad loved it as well. My dad loved Indiana Jones. And this is a father and son movie. So there was a lot of bonding went on between me and my dad that day over the film, I think, because the whole Junior.
Don't call me Junior.
Sean Connery, Indiana Jones' dad in it. There was a lot for us to both relate to. Became special film in that way.
Well, to me, this is my favourite of them all.
It is.
I believe
it's a lot of people's favourite. So I was going to say sorry.
I believe this is the first one I watched on videotape, because we had them all on videotape, and I believe this was the first one I didn't watch them in order, clearly.
Wouldn't have mattered anyway, because they're all over the place.
That's it. So, but this is I believe the first one I watched, and this is my favourite, and this is the film I adore.
Yeah.
That's in my kind of top ones to keep on going back to keep on watching. It's a real comfort film, I find.
Yeah, man.
And talk about it, Spielberg originally wanted to do a Bond type film. He gets Bond himself.
Who else? Connery. Yeah, who else to play Indiana Jones' dad? James Bond, of course.
Has to be.
What? Trust me.
Like I say, it's a few years later, and I remember at the time they made a lot of fuss about the fact that Harrison Ford was only about 11 years younger than Sean Connery, or something like that. It wasn't quite enough years for him to be his dad, anyway.
Yeah.
But they sell it because Harrison Ford was always so quite youthful for a lot of years. He was probably pushing 50s in this one, but he's still pulling it off as if he's in his 30s, because this one takes place in 1938, so I think a year or two after the events of Raiders of the Lost Ark. So it is Nazis again. And this time it's brilliant because we get to go to Germany and the castle and the Hitler rally and the whole bit. We get a full serving of evil Nazi bastards to get tucked into with this one. Of course, the Holy Grail, which was a massive part of that side of historical culture. We had books like The Holy Blood and The Holy Grail, which later went on to influence the Da Vinci Code. That was in the sort of public consciousness. So it was a great selection for them to say, like they did with the Ark of the Covenant, let's go to something that's supposed to actually exist, comes from Judeo-Christian religion, this idea of the chalice of Christ, giving everlasting life. Brilliant. That's all we need. That's going to be the thing. Like you said, we're bringing the dad in with this one. So it starts with young Indiana Jones, who is played in this case by the greatest actor of the day, the wonderful River Phoenix, brother of Joaquin Phoenix, who unfortunately died at a very young age, just a few years later. I think would still be now up there with Brad Pitt and the rest of them, as he was the greatest. He was the James Dean of his generation. At the time, 1989, I'd be about 10, 11, and River Phoenix was just like, this is the guy we all loved as, our sort of generation. He's brilliant, and he gets to play Indiana Jones as a kid. So the first scene is them as scouts, right? And there's a guy and his team that are doing some tomb raiding to find something called the Cross of Coronado, this golden cross. It belongs in a museum. We get that whole idea of that being reinforced. The guy and his team as well he looks like Indiana Jones, because they almost hoodwink you. They don't specifically tell you it's him at first, but you got this guy with the fedora. So it's almost like saying this is where he got his style from. The leather jacket, the fedora, the rest of it. He even gives him the hat at the end, doesn't he? which is a great sort of switch to Harrison as a grown-up, where they do the hat and it goes down and comes back up.
Yeah.
But a great opener.
Beautiful shot.
I loved all that. And it explains, again, as I said earlier, we got a call back to the reason he hates snakes is because when they're running along the trains, he falls into basically a big pit of snakes, isn't it? And he's like, oh!
There's a great bit with the whip as well, where he tries to whip and
and explains the reason that Harrison Ford's got this huge scar on his chin, just naturally from life, so they put that in as if to say, well, that's where he got the scar from.
Exactly. Beautiful storytelling to dip into all the bits and explain things.
Yeah.
And also, great opening that then, obviously, we'll come to this a little bit later, but, this is like the kind of first setup for, we're going to do a young indie thing. It's the first taster of that.
Yeah.
And then, then we get into...
Well, the end of that scene introduces the character of his dad. Even though we don't get to see him at first, he's just there and he's like, Dad, he's trying to tell him, you listen. And he's like, making him count in Greek or something. Then we see his dad's diary and this obsession with finding the Holy Grail.
Yeah.
So that kind of ties into that. So, fast forward a little bit. Again, we're going back to college. He's the college professor again, reinforcing that, which they kind of left alone in the second film. So it brings us back to that setting, and Denham Elliott's character comes back, Marcus Brody, Mr. Marcus Brody. It's great that they bring him back. They bring Sola back as well from the first film, John Rhys Davies, another great character that we didn't mention earlier. Fantastic that he gets brought back to do some stuff there with Denham Elliott's character. So I think they thought, look, we strayed a little bit from the formula. We suffered for it. Let's bring some of these elements back in, and we'll bring James Bond in as his dad, and we'll kill loads of Nazis again, and we'll have a proper artifact. So they learned their lesson, basically, by the time we got to The Last Crusade. And also, I think at the time, it was a feeling of Harrison Ford's getting a bit older now. He's not going to do this anymore. Sean Connery's getting older. He's only got so many films left in him. Let's do this one. Let's make it a great one. Let's bring all the old boys back in, and then we'll call it a day, and it'll be a great trilogy. And for years it was.
You have chosen wisely.
It is, and it was a get the gang back together film, wasn't it? And but it worked brilliantly for it, and they kind of just went hell for leather and went, well, what can we do then?
Yeah.
And it's a real. This is a film that is set piece after set piece.
And it's comedy. It is such a good comedy. There's so many laughs in it. I mean, never mind all the stuff with Sean Connery. It's just so funny. All the Junior, don't call me Junior, all that great stuff going on. But you also, even before he even gets together with his dad, he turns up at the castle, and remember, he's doing that, I've gone and caught a sniffle, as if he's a Scotsman. And even that snooty butler is like, you are not a Scotsman. Well, I am Mickey Mouse.
How dare he?
And all that stuff is funny as hell. Really great. They lost,
really funny.
No Shorty in this one. Obviously, they got rid of that idea, and they bring in Alison Doody, who I think is an Irish actress, to play the Austrian.
Yes.
Femme fatale, of course. And that thing about they've both been in bed with her as well.
How did you know she was a Nazi? She talks in her sleep.
Oh, yes.
That whole bit where they're tied up to the chairs and they light fire to the to the carpets in the castle, and they're trying to get out of there, and they go through to the secret Nazi bunker, and that woman's in there, the one from Austin Powers. Alarm! Alarm! It's just so cool.
It is. It's brilliant.
And this idea of his dad being a scholar, not an adventurer, but a scholar, and he having to take his dad along on it because his dad's even better than him at figuring stuff out and where stuff is and what stuff means. So you got loads of great treasure hunting and stuff. You got taking the rubbings off the shield, and they find that tomb of the knight underneath the
smashing the floor in with
Venetian catacombs and stuff. Yeah, smashing the floor of the library.
I always loved
the spot.
The his dad's book in the film as well, like with all the different things.
The diary.
The diary. I love that.
You didn't bring it, did you? You did. Should have mailed it to the Marx Brothers.
It's such a great prop. It's amazing how they can make a book so iconic.
Yeah.
In cinema.
I seen a thing about that on the making of, and apparently it was like they did about, I don't know, eight or 9 pages of it, and then repeated
it. Yeah.
So when he's going through, it's actually just the same stuff over and over.
I've seen someone recently on a side note. I saw someone on TikTok or something who he's like a film prop remaking guy kind of thing, and he's out of all the photographs and stuff he could find about it, he's managed to recreate it.
I think I've seen the same one.
Yeah, and it was really cool.
Yeah, very cool. Great little thing. The whole idea that you need the diary is the key to finding it. And actually not in the end, because it's just as it's all up there. But you got all the elements again. Like I say, that the lore of that particular artifact is all brought into it. The Nazis are after it again because once again they're after eternal life. They think if everybody can drink from it, and really cool sort of reason for them to be chasing it down. And a great rip-roaring adventure, a father and son movie, a buddy movie, a road movie. You got that great scene when they go into the airship as well, and then they have to escape from it in the plane, and then that leads to Sean Connery shoots the end of the plane out. I'm sorry, son, they got us. Yeah, great little gags in there, and that goes into a car chase, and the plane going through the tunnel, and that's a bit of a goofy comedy moment, but it fits, And then him using the birds to take down the other plane.
That's iconic.
Suddenly remembered my Charlemagne.
Let my armies be the rocks and the trees and the birds in the sky.
Absolute classic, isn't it? And,
it's so good. So good. And that,
when they end up in Germany and
he meets Hitler.
He meets Hitler at the book burning ceremony.
Yeah.
And Indiana ends up at the front of the line.
Gets an autograph
from Adolf.
There's such a good touch that in it. But that Michael Byrne, who plays the main sort of SS guy, he's great in it. Another great British actor brought in to play the Nazi there, though. Really good. He's a bastard. You want him killed straight away. When he punches him out of the airship, no ticket.
No ticket.
That's a classic Indiana Jones moment. That was done again with Kevin Smith and the rest of it. They love that.
And then we end up in with that tank scene in the desert where they're all chasing.
Yeah, brilliant film. Real great success as well. Massive box office hit. Like I said, the whole family went to watch it. What's not to love? John Williams returned to doing the score again, the great theme and all the great music. You got that great guy who plays the knight as well. We've chosen wisely.
It's a great end.
They bring that back with that guy. He chose poorly, and he ages like 100 years in 5 seconds. That was a bit of a callback to Tote getting melted, wasn't it? It was like
in the first one,
bit gruesome, a bit sort of stop motion.
I love all that in that end sequence with the puzzles and stuff that they've got to.
Yeah, and the leap of faith bit, where he has to go out and it's an optical illusion. But you need all that stuff in there. I think that's kind of part of it.
Yeah.
If you don't have that stuff as much, it loses something. So, like I say, they went back to that kind of thing in this. But as I said, a great father and son movie, really good sort of humor between them. The relationship that was never quite right between them becomes resolved because they share an adventure together, and that whole thing of him, she's like reaching for the cup and he's trying to let it go, and she falls to her death. And then instantly Indy is put in that position and it's his dad trying to save him, and he's like, I can just get it. And he's like, there's the whole lesson, let it go. Pulls him out. It's just really good writing again. Was it Kazdan again?
It wasn't Kazdan, no. Kazdan only did the first film, strangely.
I knew he didn't do the second because it wasn't quite as good, but whoever did this one was good.
They kept on changing writers throughout it. It's always a strange thing with it. They never quite decided who should be on it. Jeffrey Bohm wrote it. But,
great. Did a good job. It's very funny script.
Especially with the final lines of the film,
Henry Jones Jr.
Like Indiana.
We named the dog Indiana.
It was actually George Lucas's dog, who apparently was a massive Malamute, and he used to sit on the chair next to him and was also the inspiration for Chewbacca. Anyway, factoids, everybody knows these things, I'm sure. So, anyway, Last Crusade, absolutely popular. Like you said, some people's favourite.
Yeah.
It's either the first movie or this movie that are people's favourites. I like Raiders the most, but this is a very close second. Not in no small part because of Sean Connery. He is brilliant in it. He plays it to a T. He doesn't have to be the tough guy in this one. He lets Harrison Ford do all the tough guy stuff, and he's almost the comedy relief. He's great in that sense. Yeah. And you get a nice idea that Denham Elliott's character they were friends. You haven't brought Paul Marcus along, have you? And then when they hook up, they hook up in the tank, and they're doing like something from their childhood where they did this little. Yeah, brilliant.
Partygate thing, yeah.
That's a funny joke in it as well, where he's like, Marcus Brody speaks 1,000 languages. He'll blend in. He'll be gone. He'll probably have the Grail already. And then it jump cuts to him in this marketplace. Hello, does anybody speak English? Standing out like a sore thumb. Great humour. Spielberg did a great job. Again,
as always,
it's a classic. You mentioned earlier it sort of rocketed those 80s blockbusters. We had Back to the Future after Ghostbusters, all of these ones we were talking about. And this is almost like the bookend to it because it's 1989. It's the end of the 80s. One of the last great 80s blockbusters probably to come out of this kind of film. So, in a sense, Indiana Jones, the original trilogy now, it bookends that period
decade
of cinema. And you could do a lot worse than especially those two films. But as far as the original trilogy goes, I would rank them Raiders of the Lost Ark first, then Last Crusade, then Temple of Doom. Although, like I said, I probably watched Temple of Doom the most as a kid.
Yeah, I think Last Crusade, Raiders, Temple for me, but they're very close films, and they're just so great. And what a trilogy, and what a treat.
I mean, it is a solid trilogy. When we talk about things like Back to the Future and the original Star Wars, they're as close as you get to perfect trilogies, really. And they're the trilogy of trilogies for me. Star Wars, the original three, Back to the Future, and of course, Indiana Jones. In terms of family films, anyway. So Indiana Jones is probably the top of that stack as well.
I can't forget how wonderful it was.
Thank you. It was rather wonderful.
So after we had The Last Crusade, which we thought would be the last we'd see of Indy, we did have the intervening years before we get to what's going to Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which comes later. But we saw a taster of something that was going to be explored at the beginning of Last Crusade, of course, the young Indiana Jones. So in the intervening years, we got Indiana Jones in a different form with a television series, the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles. Unfortunately, River Phoenix, of course, as we mentioned earlier, passed away before this got going.
So I don't think he would have done it anyway because he was a movie star, and this is getting to movies, TV stuff, really.
But Corey Carrier and Sean Patrick Flannery are the two main young stars who played young Indy in one of the most expensive, especially at that time, a television series produced by Rick McCallum, of course, joins George on the prequel Star Wars films.
Gotta love Rick.
Week. Good old Rick. Throwing money around like nothing. And
that's the kind of producer you want.
It is. He's a great character. I always love.
I love watching him on all the prequels, making
documentaries and stuff. Yeah, it's a brilliant.
He's so
character.
funny. Some of the stuff he comes out with, he's a dude.
And but yeah, they produced the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles. They're quite good fun.
I haven't seen them all. I've seen a few.
No,
weren't they like sort of like mini TV movies? A lot of them movie length, or am I just remembering that wrong?
So they've been done in multiple ways over the years. When they originally did them, they were like hour-ish long. They were TV movie quality. I mean, the production value, and of course, they went all over the world to shoot these things. But kind of, it was very expensive, but it wasn't a rating smash, unfortunately. So it didn't do very well. But later on, they kind of repackaged the original episodes into like bigger movies.
They were all done in chapters, weren't they? And all of the original films were given a chapter number to fit in with the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles.
Exactly.
Bollocks idea that is. That's around the time that they did the Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Rebranding.
That was around that time.
George loves this rebranding, doesn't he?
Well, certainly those people behind George do. The Kathleen Kennedys of the world that are like, giving him all sorts of ideas to.
I think Kathleen Kennedy might have. This might be the time that she started getting involved a lot with George Lucas and Lucasfilm and stuff.
And Spielberg
through
Spielberg. A lot of work with Spielberg before.
Yeah. So I think might have been involvement there, and of course, also during this time, it'd be rude not to mention that there was a lot of Indiana Jones games. There was games when the films came out on the basic consoles, but there was a big point in the 90s where some big Indiana Jones games came out, like Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis, which I enjoyed a lot when I was younger.
Was it like Tomb Raider? Same format?
No, so they were more. Fate of Atlantis was a point-and-click adventure game from back in the day, which I really enjoyed. It's not some people just not their cup of tea, really. I mean, they've gone on more recently to have things like Lego Indiana Jones and stuff, and they're supposed to be doing a new one for the new movie, so it'd be interesting to see what they come up with over there.
So, how many episodes did they do of the Young Indiana Jones? Or chapters, or whatever they were calling them.
So there was 28 episodes and 4 TV films.
So 28 plus 4.
Yeah.
So we had 32. I take it the TV films must have been like the first one where he's a kid.
I think it's a mix, because I think that they kind of did different ones, and the way they kind of did it, it wasn't quite so straightforward.
I didn't watch a lot of them. I watched a few of them, and there'd be things like he'd be involved in a lot of like different wars. He was a soldier a lot of the time, and joining up with people, and it seemed to me to be a little bit more war heavy than it did about him finding artifacts and stuff like that. But like I said, I didn't watch them all, so I might be wrong.
No, I've only seen certain ones. So I've probably seen maybe half of them, maybe, but. There was a thing of like, well, they're supposed to be edutainment, so they were kind of supposed to be like educational, kids orientated. So they had that kind of aspect kind of for them. They shot in 25 countries over 150 weeks. I mean, thinking that back in the early 90s, the production of a television program to be that scale. I mean, nowadays it's nothing, is it? With
Netflix,
screams, Netflix, and Amazon and stuff like that. But for at the time, Gary Fisher, Terry Jones, Daniel Craig, Christopher Lee, Catherine Zeta-Jones, Timothy Spall, big, massive stars for a television program. And so you can see why it probably cost so much money and just failed to, how it's supposed to recoup that,
Yeah.
How it's supposed to live up to it. So,
unfortunately. By being good.
Yeah. Too good for its time.
Think it was that good, to be honest.
Well, I think it was too much for its time. I think if they, nowadays something like this would probably work.
It would, yeah, probably.
Would. But it was probably trying to do something that they weren't ready to do.
But yeah, there we go then. Not incredibly successful, cost them a fortune. They still did enough of them though. It's not like they axed it after 5 episodes. They bloody made loads of them. Sean Patrick Flannery was it who played the young Indiana Jones? So like the one I remember,
Yeah.
He did all right out of it. He got some work out of that because his movie career never really took off. He was in a few things, but it never really took off. But he's probably best known as the young Indiana Jones. And then how many years later? Let's have a look. We come to 2008. So a good 20 years, almost 20 years after the Last Crusade, they decided to bring him back. So it's Lucasfilm, they brought back Star Wars by doing the prequels. It had a modicum of success, one could say, enough box office anyway to make it worthwhile. So after they've made another 3 Star Wars films, where are you going to go after that? Well, let's see if Harrison's interested in bringing Indiana Jones back. Turns out the check was big enough, and like we mentioned earlier, he likes the character. So is Steven on board? Yeah, Steven's on board. Steven's going to do it. Is Johnny Williams going to write the theme? Yeah, Johnny's in. How about some of the old crew? Well, yeah, we're bringing back Karen Allen this time. Marion Ravenwood. Wow. Yeah, we loved her. Brilliant. Bring her back. Let's have a bit of that. And we've got Cate Blanchett. The Russians this time are the baddies. But that's sort of time appropriate because it would have moved on into the 1950s. So, yeah, this is quite a few years after. He's more of an aging college professor now. Doesn't do as many adventures by the sounds of it in his life.
A teacher?
Part-time.
I mean, that first opener, you've got the Area 51, and there's a few callbacks to things like the Ark of the Covenants in there somewhere.
Yeah.
That was kind of a cool opener, I thought.
It was a very cool opening.
Even the lead-lined fridge and the nuclear explosion, I can accept it. I still thought it was cool.
Yeah, I loved that sequence, but I mean the opening bit with there's a lot of callbacks in that warehouse, and the whole setup is a cool way to start the movie. Sets us where we are and everything. Introduces us to Ray Winston's character. Mac early on, and gets us going. When he reaches that nuclear testing facility, the
Nuketown.
Nuketown, which I just think of games like Call of Duty and stuff whenever
exactly.
See it.
That's why I think that sort of thing's definitely been inspired by it, hasn't it?
But I thought it was a really funny sequence going in and then realising that they're all fake and
it was really well shot, and I thought it came together really well.
And I know loads of people. I remember at the time because this is the first indie film I saw at the cinema, the only indie film I seen in the cinema, and. Right. And I remember at the time after it came out, everyone going, "Oh, it's so stupid. That wouldn't happen. That wouldn't work." Blah blah blah. Taking it so seriously. Yeah. And I was just like, "It was cool. Who cares?" I
have reservations about it, but they're more towards the end of the film than that bit at the start. That bit at the start was okay. It was good. It was good fun. It was good fun to see, him back in the hat, doing the things that we love to see him do. Swinging from the whip and punching out the bad guys and having a car chase and the rest of it and all that. And fighting that big Russian as well. They have that huge scrap before they fall onto that jet engine thing, and that blows them into the desert. And it's kind of cool.
I think the biggest objection to this film, and probably one of my problems at the time, was Shia LaBeouf. Because...
Actual cannibal Shia
LaBeouf. Remembered at the time that the biggest thing he was in at that moment was the Transformers, and I detested Transformers, and a lot of people obviously did. And
I only watched the first one, and it was all right, but I didn't love it. I grew up with the cartoon, so I should have loved it, and I didn't love it.
Yeah,
Michael Bay bollocks, fucking.
Well, that's it, because it's Michael Bay, and that's what with them films is like. Oh God, but. I think his attachment to those obviously sullied him in everyone's eyes, and so him being in this film at that moment in time, this is before all of his kind of cult stuff he did in a bit later with Cannibal, Shia LaBeouf, and all that. That because of that, that sullied it a bit. People were just like, "Oh, fucking not him," and I think that was what was the detriment, particularly at the time. I think that was probably the biggest objection.
Well, it was what they were trying to do was invert that whole father and son thing, but this time Indy's the father, obviously, and he's the son, and it was sort of of the time he was like in the 50s, so he was like a young sort of teenage rocker, wasn't he? Biker dude with his Elvis hair and all that, and his flick knife, and
a greaser.
Yeah, a greaser. Can't you get him for your greasy head?
Get this guy.
Who?
Joe College hit him hard.
Here, hold this. What?
But they brought Calvin Allen back, and I tell you what, I tell you, annoyed me more in it than Shia LaBeouf was Ray Winstone. I love him as an actor, but I wasn't really sold on him in it. He was a bit like, you don't know him, you don't know him, you don't know him. Well, whatever. Basically, there was the whole thing, wasn't it? We're going to do Aliens this time, and Spielberg said to Lucas, "No, we're not doing Aliens. We've both done Aliens. I've done Close Encounters. You've done Star Wars. Well, let's not bring Indiana Jones into that world." So Lucas went away and thought about it, and he come back and he said, "We're not doing Aliens." And Spielberg was like, "Yes, we're doing interdimensional beings."
Okay, George.
And fair dues, fair dues for the. I think it's the documentary on this actual copy of it that Spielberg tells that story, and they left it in.
Yeah.
It was like kind of rolling his eyes at George Lucas and his silly ideas, but it does harm it. It just makes it stupid, really. I mean, it's not a very good conclusion. Even John Hurt in there. You got John Hurt in there, one of our greatest actors. He couldn't elevate. It was a waste of John Hurt, really. Made him kind of some sort of idiot savant in a way.
Yeah, well, that whole thing was really stupid and a real shame. And the end of the movie, once you get to that ending sequence of the film, like the third, and by the time you get to that last part with the whole fucking temple spinning, and it is so stupid. You just think, oh, what a wasted opportunity.
Yeah. Sort of just farted its way out of trouble, really. You had all those Russians being eaten by the ants. And not really much else happening. No one's face melted. The pyramid collapses. That's kind of cool. There's cool elements there with the whole pyramid, the way it sort of the mechanisms of it and all the stone moving and the sand that was kind of cool, but it wasn't cool enough to stop it from being a turkey of an ending.
No,
and then the fucking flying saucers taken off at the end. It was just like, oh, it looks nice, but that's all.
I guess it's because there was no there was no proper object that was really iconic that they're going after, which was one of the problems, I think. And in terms of villains, there's not a real proper villain.
Well, Cate Blanchett is the villain.
But she's but how the first and the third, it's the Nazis, and like a proper force that seem to be going after. It doesn't feel like that, because by the ending you've got these aliens that you've not even seen yet, and it just seems a bit like
It seems like in the past it was Hitler that wanted the Ark of the Covenant because of his occult thing that we mentioned earlier, and then we said with the Last Crusade you could understand them wanting the Holy Grail because it gives you eternal life and they can give it to all the troops. But with this one, it seemed like it was her character's obsession to find this artifact, which ended up being like an alien artifact. I mean, if you're going to do it, that's where you start in Area 51 and you do all that kind of side of it. But just where it ended up going was bollocks, wasn't it?
It was.
It was a load of bollocks. It was a shame because when it was first sort of touted and they did all the usual featurettes and the trailers and stuff, it's like, oh, this is going to be great. But I couldn't help but I felt like that coming out of the Phantom Menace, though. It was like, I enjoyed it. There was elements to it that I really enjoyed, But overall, as a film, I don't think it was as good as the other stuff, the old stuff. And that's how I felt coming out of Crystal Skull. It was a bit like,
yeah,
what a shame.
A real shame.
So,
But
yeah.
Can they redeem themselves?
Now, this is the thing that brings us right up to date, 2023. In, like we said, a month and a half, we're going to have the 5th installment, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Now, is Spielberg back? No, he is not. It's James Mangold this time. Is Johnny Williams back on the music? I hope so. Obviously, Lucasfilm, now owned by Disney, is still behind it. We've got Phoebe Waller-Bridge is stepping into the Shia LaBeouf sort of role where she's the young, up-and-coming helper, so to speak, or assistant. Like if it was Doctor Who, we call them assistants. Something different they've done this time is they've used a bit of deep fake technology to de-age Harrison Ford, so we do get Nazis again. They have brought the Nazis back for a good killing, this time in the form of what looks like Mads Mikkelsen. So it looks like the timeline jumps back to the 40s or the 30s when the Nazis were on the rise, probably done it in the 40s when they were in full swing, World War II. We've had a full trailer to have a good look at it, so we can see a young Harrison Ford de-aged magically by the deep fake guys, looking pretty good. Whether it holds in the whole scene, I don't know, because as we've discussed before, when they did it with Mark Hamill in the Mandalorian series, and some of it looked good, some of it looked crap. So I don't know what they've done here. Or we'll have to see whether it looks good, but it looks full of that kind of tomb raiding stuff, catacombs, booby traps, puzzles. They look like they got plenty of that because it's called Dial of Destiny. So the dial itself is a little bit of a sort of trinket.
This is it, yeah.
Tchotchke sort of artifact. It's kind of cool. The poster they've done for it, which I'll put up now, is very cool because it's reminiscent of the old serials, which is what they tried to do with all the other posters in a way. So that element of it's great. It really is retro. What are your thoughts on the trailer and the anticipation for this one?
I think now I've seen the trailer, I'm more excited about it. See, when they first announced it, when we knew it was actually happening, because they've been talking about this film for years. But when it was kind of finally like, oh, it is going to happen, and we're going to be filming here, I was very reticent and hesitant on it, thinking, is he too old now? Is it a step too far? The last one wasn't that great. Is this necessary? And it probably isn't necessary, and probably doesn't need to be done on all these things. But after seeing the trailer, I'm a lot more excited about it, and it looks fun. Yeah. And that's the main thing. It's the fun of it. There'll be stuff about it which will be crap, I'm sure, but it looks like a lot of fun. There's loads of cool
callbacks,
stuff going on, and callbacks and stuff.
You got John Rhys Davis is back as Sulla, which is nice. Like I said, no shorty. I was hoping for Ke Huy Quan.
That would have been really nice, yeah.
Even if it was just he's only in it as 5 minutes, and he's a college professor as well, or something like that. That would have been nice. But
we've got people like Phoebe Waller-Bridge and Antonio Banderas and Toby Jones in this one, which is really cool.
And like I say, Mads Mikkelsen is a great choice to play the bad guy.
Absolutely.
He's a great actor. Love him in everything, and he'll be a great choice as this kind of like Nazis obviously obsessed with turning back time. Dial of Destiny implies it's time travel this time, and the idea that they want to go back to correct Hitler's mistakes is what is hinted at in the trailer. So I can live with that. I can live with a time travel element.
It's supposed to also be about it's supposed to be about the space race as well. So that'll be interesting how that unfolds.
Yeah, and there's one small part of the trailer where they're in a cockpit that kind of reminisces the Millennium Falcon a little bit. And there's this and there's this light outside, like when they go through hyperspace. So there's obviously probably a little bit of a callback to that somewhere, which is fun. It's a fun thing. Easter eggs, really, for the fans. Biggest worry for me is superficial, really. It's things like, is the deep fake going to look all right? Because they've obviously relied on doing that quite a bit to go back and de-age him. but I'm sure all the other elements look like they're there. You know, Nazi killing, loads of action, lots of funnies, lots of humor in there. You know,
and
I am excited by it as well.
Yeah, I think it's basically a nostalgia film, and if it does it right, it'll be okay.
Yeah,
and they've kind of said it's the last one.
Yeah,
not doing anymore.
Well, they said that after the Last Crusade.
Well,
to be honest, never say never. I say if the check's big enough.
Well, actually, I was just reading that apparently when they made the first Indiana Jones, they signed a 4-picture sequel deal. So this would be the last of that original deal if they'd actually gone with it.
Oh, right, yeah. Just because it's the 5th film, absolutely. No Marion Ravenwood, so they're going to have to explain away why he's still not married to her, because they married him off at the end of that. Also, where's the son going to be? Because they did that in the Crystal Skull. They said, because Sean Connery had passed away, I think by then, they said, oh, his dad's passed away, and there's a photo of him there, isn't there? And they kind of dealt with that there because the reason his dad wouldn't be in it. So they're going to have to do some sort of explaining here, because he's obviously still a college professor, and she's the daughter, his goddaughter or something. So it's obviously the daughter of who knows.
The biggest question is
colleagues.
The biggest question, of course, is because this is the first film that's not distributed by Paramount.
Yeah,
and of course, the beginning of all the Indiana Jones films starts with the Paramount.
But they're all Spielberg films as well.
But it's still Lucasfilm though.
The first one, it's the Jungle Mountain. And then the second one, it's on the Gong, the mountain. And then the third one is, what is it in the third one? It's some rock in the desert, because they start as kids, don't they? You know, they're scouts out on the trail. And
in the fourth one, it's the Ant Hill.
I thought it was a Gopher.
Or Gopher Hill.
That's how you knew the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull wasn't going to be as good. It starts with CGI gophers. It does. That's the first shot, and then those roadsters go off, which was some callback to like George Lucas.
Well, it's very Star Wars prequel-y.
American graffiti sort of cars going on and all that.
But now that it's not a Paramount film with that mountain to go off in that first shot.
They might still do it as a first shot, just because all Indiana Jones films start with
that. Of course, the whole thing has been what they're going to do, because the opening production, that will be the Disney castle. So are they going to have a castle as the first shot and transition that maybe?
This is a castle, isn't it? There are tapestries.
Yeah, I think what they wanted to do with this was, let's not go out on a real turkey, i.e. the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Let's sort of wipe away the bad taste from that and finish on one more great Indiana Jones adventure. And let's face it, that's all we're hoping for.
Yeah. And hopefully they deliver enough of just a nostalgia feel and a load of fun, and that's all we're kind of.
I don't think it's going to be anywhere near as good as the original 3 films, but I think it is going to be better than Crystal Skull. That's my prediction. We'll cover it after it comes out. We'll go and see it, and then we'll add our thoughts on Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny to this collection. But yeah, anything else you want to say about these magnificent movies of our childhood?
No, I think we've covered it all. Excited to see what the new one's going to be like, and just some of the best films.
So there we go, the Indiana Jones films covered by More Movies, myself, Greg Fisher, and my colleague here, David Roberts. What do you think? What is your favourite Indiana Jones film? Did you hate Crystal Skull 2? Let us know why. Did you love it? Let us know why. Just come and say hi. We appreciate all the likes and shares, etc. Thanks very much for listening in. Big thank you to our regular patrons, Michelle and Shane. Thanks very much. We appreciate you both. But yeah, I think that wraps up Bumper Buster bonus podcast on Indiana Jones. Thanks very much for listening in, and hopefully we'll catch you on the next one. Dave, any final thoughts before we go?
Well, just go get myself some whiskey at the bar, And go have a drink with Marion.
Be careful. She could drink you under the table, son. I bet she still could.
Probably good.
What a character.
I'm
Anyway, thanks for watching and or listening. Catch you on the next one. And in between, please keep watching more movies. Well, that's it for this video. Please leave us a comment and let us know what you thought. And don't forget to like, share and subscribe right here on YouTube. To check out more of our articles and reviews, check out our website, moremovies.co.uk. And why not join us on social media? That's at More Movies for you across the board. You know the score. And if you'd like to support us, consider buying us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com, or you can become a More Movies patron over on patreon.com. All the links are in the description below. And to check out more of our filmtastic videos, click one of the buttons on screen now.